You ready to let the dogs out?
What?
Do what? Let the dogs out. You know, like, who let the dogs out? Who?
Off the Hook, airing on offthehooksports.com. Your home for real news, real opinions, and what really matters about Tennessee athletics. Always available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeart. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Always available wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Welcome to the program. We are off and running. Blake Toppmeyer will join us with Gannett News Service USA Today. He is the SEC columnist, so looking forward to that. Also, talk of the Senior Bowl. What ball will Tennessee miss the most after Darnell Wright just absolutely blows up in Mobile, Alabama? And I got to tell you, I'm not incredibly surprised. As a matter of fact, I am not surprised at all, but garnered an awful lot of attention. And also, Tennessee basketball against Auburn. If you watched that game, then I'm sorry. Then I truly apologize, and you should be refunded your cable service for the month, because that was pretty brutal, and I want to get into that because I've got serious concerns that echo what Caleb said early, and he got ripped apart on the message boards on YouTube, but he's absolutely correct. And this basketball team has about 26 days or so, if I were to count it up, to get things in gear, because March Madness is right around the corner, and this basketball team is going to hurt its seeding if it continues to play like that. I know they've won, but it was a very ugly win, and I don't know that they go deep into the tournament unless some issues get resolved quickly. So, Caleb, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you today, Dave?
I'm well. It was apparently a facial hair weekend, as you added some and I took off the beard. I went so long, it was the Friday before Christmas, and that's as long as I could go. So let's go ahead and get into basketball right now. I'll remind you that Ron Slay joins us each and every Wednesday, and that's brought to you by Zach England of Best and Brock. Zach England of Best and Brock. Zach's got your back. Personal injury attorney in Chattanooga. You can't beat Zach England of Best and Brock. Hit that thumbs up button for me, please. If you haven't subscribed yet, we would greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much. Caleb, wow. The balls you would have thought, with Bruce Pearl in the house, with people questioning them and what they and how they haven't met expectations, just did not come out and play very well on Saturday. And I thought we're very fortunate that Auburn can't shoot either, and they ultimately Tennessee was able to get the win, but it was not pretty, and it was pretty brutal is what it was.
Yeah, and so the first question is, are we sure Ron Slay is coming Wednesday? Is he not going to duck us?
Yeah, he'll be here. He'll be here. I can promise you that.
Yeah, that was awful. And I don't want to hear any, I saw I'm not going to name names, but I saw a Tennessee beat reporter tweet out how you have to eke out tough wins like this and how that's somehow a good sign. No, it's not. No, it's not. This wasn't Tennessee eking out a tough win. This was both teams playing horrendous, and Tennessee was just lucky that Auburn played a little bit worse than they did in that game. I mean, I get Tennessee's a good defensive team, but one team shoots 2 of 21. Oh, excuse me. One team shoots 2 of 21 from 3, and the other shoots 3 of 27. That's bad basketball. And also, Tennessee was 10 of 17 from the free throw line, 58%. This is one of those type of college basketball games. By the way, this is 2 top 25 teams. This is one of those type of college basketball games that it always makes me laugh when people say they prefer watching college basketball to the NBA. This is why this is why I prefer the NBA, because college basketball allows for teams to win playing that level of patheticness in a game. 2 top 25 teams. These are supposed to be 2 of the more elite teams in the sport, and they look like that. I mean, that's just embarrassing, honestly. And what we're seeing now is if Santi Vescovi is not red hot, is not shooting well, Tennessee got no answer from 3. Tennessee has nobody else that can consistently shoot. Josiah Jordan-James was the one player who you could be proud of how he played. He had a double-double, but he was 1 of 7 from 3. And again, it was an embarrassing game. And it's funny that we're talking about this, about a top 25 win. But for people who wonder why there's not a lot of energy behind this Tennessee basketball team, that's why. It's obvious that this team has some glaring offensive issues.
Yeah, and if they want to feed it into the post as much as they want to, I'm fine with that. You and I may differ on that a little bit, but the post player has to be able to kick it out for an open three at some point. And if you want to go in and out, I get that. But I just felt like Tennessee coming down the stretch couldn't get surefire buckets. And if you're a post team that's built on defense, what should you do in the last 3-4 minutes of the game? You should be able to get stops. You should be able, and they did that. It was largely Auburn, I thought, missing opportunities. But you also should be able to get those tough twos. Listen, if you want to build your team like that, I get it. But get the tough twos. Tennessee had an opportunity to close the door on Auburn late, and they didn't. And I just felt like for this point in the season, it's February. That felt like a December game to me, Caleb. That felt like a team that didn't know itself. And I understand in December if you lose games and it's not the conference schedule and you don't look great because you're still finding yourself with the way rosters turn over. I get that. But this felt like a December game on February the 4th. And that to me makes absolutely no sense. And I understand injuries are a part of it. I get that. But also to not to pile on, but coming off just a terrible showing at Florida and not have something put together to play better at home. I mean, this was set up. I don't remember the spread. You probably do. Do you remember it off the top of your head?
I do not actually.
Well, I mean, it was fairly significant if you want to Google that real quick. But I don't understand why Tennessee didn't come out and play better, both their players, and have a better sort of approach. It just I don't know. I ask you this question. I do want to get to the message board, so we're not forgetting you. John said we stunk just a tad bit less. The Kentucky game was bad too. Travis said they did get a quality win, and they did, but they just aren't a good shooting team, and that's ultimately what it is. So when you look at this basketball team, what are realistic expectations? And things could change. I've seen them go up and down in February. But right now, what are realistic expectations? You said it's not a Final Four worthy team, despite being number 2 in the nation last week. So I know kind of where you stand on that. But what's best case scenario if you're a Tennessee fan? Is it Elite 8? Is it Sweet 16? What is it?
Yeah, I think best case scenario is Elite 8. I think defensive teams like this that aren't good shooting teams or that are prone to these bad offensive performances are capable of getting all the way to the Elite 8. I don't think they're capable of getting to the Final Four. I don't think you can win 4 games like this in the NCAA tournament. And to address it, I don't mind. I guess I should clarify where I come from. I don't mind inside-out basketball, but the thing, Kansas plays inside-out basketball. Bill Self, that's what he lives and dies by. Roy Williams, when he was winning national championships in North Carolina, always had a go-to big man underneath the basket. My thing with inside-out basketball is inside-out basketball, there is the out part. there is the part where guys got to hit open shots.
This isn't inside-out basketball. It's inside, keep it inside, and hope that a guy's able to make a play, and oftentimes not. It's not inside-out basketball. I think it's designed to be that way, but it's not right now, Caleb.
Yeah, it's not at all. And the key to inside-out basketball is you got to have good shooters. I mean, you got to have somebody that can stretch the floor. And again, all you have is Santi Vescovi, and I don't know what type of slump he's in right now, but you kick it out to Josiah Jordan-James. You don't know what type of game he's going to have because he'll either go 1 of 7 or 5 of 10 from 3. If that's every other game, well, that's a problem in March Madness. Kick it out to Zakai Ziegler. Who is sitting here worried like, oh my gosh, Zakai's open for a 3? Who's thinking that when you kick it out to him?
Nobody. I think there's concern whether he can get the ball in bounds or not. That was another aspect late in the game that just was in stark contrast when you think back to Bruce Pearl and his inbounds plays, and they were so genius. That's why I always said that. I know it's cool, but that just to not be able to get the ball in bounds at one point when Kai Ziegler is running back and forth, I thought was very emblematic of the problems this team has. And that is, Caleb, they just don't seem to really know each other right now. John's saying I would much rather hit a slump now as opposed to hitting it in March. I agree, but I think what you're talking about, if you're talking about a chug-along type of offense that is going to face some really potent offenses in March Madness, and I don't know that can get fixed. Caleb, can it get fixed in the short term, and what would you do to fix it if you're Rick Barnes?
I think your best case if you're Rick Barnes is to go small for the rest of the way. I think put Josiah Jordan-James at the 4, put Santi, so go Zakai, Josiah, Santi, and I would say Tyreek Key, or I'm sorry, Julian Phillips, and then Tyreek Key, and then have Julian Phillips or Olivier Nkamwa underneath the basket at the 5. I think go small, turn up the tempo a little bit, play a little faster. I think Tennessee has some athleticism with their length that a lot of teams can't compete with, and so I think their best case is to try to turn up the tempo a lot more, play a little more chaotic, play circa Bruce Pearl 2005, 2006, when he brought in that 2-2-1 press that nobody in the SEC was ready for at the time. That was still, I still maintain that 05-06 Tennessee basketball team, his first year, that was the most fun team I ever watched. And I think that's their best chance to get something going, because quite honestly, at this point, you're not going to find another shooter. I've said you need 2 to 3 reliable elite shooters to go far in the NCAA tournament. Tennessee's got 1 in Sandy Vescovi, and he's slumping right now. So if he's slumping, they don't have another guy. And you can't find that in the middle of the season. Tyreek Key's a scorer, not really a shooter. Julian Phillips can exert his will underneath the basket, but he sure as heck is not playing like a 5-star right now. I was reading reports when he committed last year that he was the new Kevin Durant for Rick Barnes. Looks nothing like Kevin Durant right now. Can't stretch the floor the way KD can. So I don't think they really have any. They can't solve the one big problem that comes to get you in March. So their best chance is to really turn up and play at a frenetic pace because they have the athletes to do that.
Well, I just think it's incredibly important. And again, hit that thumbs up button, the like button. We greatly appreciate it. I just think it's incredibly important that Tennessee is able to get at least a 2 seed. Because you start getting into the matchups, and 1 versus 16, you're going to win. 2 versus 15 with 95% chance you're going to win. I mean, it does happen. But then you start getting into 3, 4 seed where you're playing a 14 or a 13. Then suddenly you're getting realistically that you could get upset. And not to mention the second round is even more challenging the further you fall. So, Tennessee is in a precarious position right now, and they've really got to find their way really quickly.
They are, and you're right, they do. And like we've talked about, Rick Barnes has been to the second weekend once the last 15 years, and that was that 2018-2019 team, which for people that are questioning, I'm sorry, that 2018-2019 team with Grant Williams, they would blow this team out of the water. They would absolutely obliterate this team. And
I asked the question earlier. You said they could get to the Elite 8. That surprised me a little bit.
I said that's best case scenario. I don't think they're going that far.
Okay. I think best case scenario is Sweet 16. I think this is looking like a 1 weekend team, to be real honest with you. But the other thing that plays in their favor, Caleb, that we have to remember is it seems like we say this often, but it's very true now, that it's just wide open. College basketball is right now. I mean, I don't know how you pick a top team that is significantly better than all the others. I don't see that team right now. Do you?
No, I don't. And one of the biggest reasons for that, quite honestly, is because of how the top 2 teams, Purdue and Tennessee, I got no faith in either of them getting out of the Sweet 16. Quite honestly, I don't think Purdue is going that far because Purdue, everything I'm criticizing about Tennessee, Purdue plays to an extreme level. Purdue is the, I don't want to mention his name because it creates strong feelings either way, but everything wrong with Quanzo Martin's system you see in Purdue with their obsession with defense, and it gets the best of them every time in the tournament. I think the best they ever did was an Elite Eight run when they beat Tennessee a few years ago. And I firmly believe that style doesn't win national championships. You look at the Gene Keady coaching tree, which Cuonzo Martin came from, and I think Purdue's coaches Matt Painter comes from that too. Gene Keady, stress defense. That's where Jamie Dixon came from when he was at Pitt. Nobody from that coaching tree ever goes to the Final Four. Nobody. Because it's such a grind to focus on defense all year. March comes, you're mentally drained, and you don't have any scoring options.
So I wanted to switch gears to football here for a second, and it involves Lane Kiffin and a tweet that he sent out about his son. So I actually I watched a little bit of tape, and he's still at the loaded up phase. By that, I mean the ball's a little bit big for him. His son Knox is now he would be 13 years old. Remember, or 12 years old, I believe. He was born in Knoxville. Lane Kiffin said at the time he was just named Knox, and that was a coincidence. But I don't believe that. And I can tell you the administration didn't believe that. I think it was a way for Lane to endear himself. It's a cool name. Lane to endear himself to the fans. And he thought he was staying at Tennessee for quite a while. That didn't happen when Southern California came calling. But you have Knox, who I watched throw the ball, who is going to be well coached up. And let's face it, nowadays, if you have a good bit of physical ability and you're around the right people, Caleb, you can turn yourself, and you have the drive, you can turn yourself into a quarterback prospect. And Lane's not the biggest dude in the world. We'll see how big Knox is. But if he gets to the 6'2", 6'3" range, 6'3", 6'4", then you're talking about a guy who is going to have significant interest. And again, is going to be coached up. I think it's from the neck up. I'm curious what you think. Now, right now, Knox has released a top 6, I believe. And Knox is not, it doesn't have Tennessee included in that. But I'm curious what you think if Tennessee was recruiting Knox at one point. Again, we're talking 6 years down the line. But if that were the case, would Tennessee fans embrace him, or would they just be like, been down the Kiffin road? Because on my Twitter, and again, hit that thumbs up button for our new viewers that are popping in, my Twitter was overwhelmingly positive that come back to Tennessee, which I was a little bit surprised over the weekend. Your thoughts?
I think they would embrace him. I think they would mostly embrace him because that's such to a certain degree, middle finger to Lane Kiffin. in a way, it's I don't. Here's the hilarious part about that. Lane Kiffin's the coach at Ole Miss. If he's a blue chip and Tennessee gets him, that's another Ole Miss player. That's another elite quarterback that Tennessee plucked from Ole Miss. And man, how bad will Ole Miss be at Tennessee at that point? They still aren't over Peyton Manning.
I think we'd have to look at a bunch of ifs. I think one would have to be if Lane Kiffin was in the NFL or something. I mean, I think he's going to go where his dad is, regardless of where that might be. And if he's at Ole Miss in 6 years, I've got some oceanfront property in Tempe, Arizona that I would like to sell you, because he's not going to be at Ole Miss in 6 years. But wherever that is, it would have to be a non-fit for Knox not to go to where his dad is coaching. However, I know that Knox was a Tennessee fan, especially when they were at FAU. The family was. I know that they had a Tennessee room in their house even after things went down, and had a lot of ties and spent time in Knoxville. Travis says Lane is a shyster, but definitely not Knox's fault. And I will tell you right now that I believe that he would consider Tennessee. We're talking 6 years down the line. I just wonder if that would even be worth it, Caleb, for Tennessee and the Kiffins to reunite. I mean, if I'm a Kiffin, do I want to go down that road again? I don't think I do.
I mean, I do think that, quite honestly, I heard rumblings when I was covering the coaching search in 2017 after the Schiano disaster that Lane Kiffin would have taken the Tennessee job if he got hired back.
There's no question.
I think the failures of say what you want about Lane Kiffin. We all remember that 2009 year, and it was one of the most fun 7-6 years you could ever be a part of. And I think outside of maybe getting into trouble with the NCAA, I don't think there was any question that Tennessee was going to be a pretty good program under Lane Kiffin. You could see the pieces coming into place with him going in the future.
Well, in Lane's defense, too, it was his brother-in-law, David Reeves, that set up the hostess gate thing, and he did not go with Lane to Southern California. So I think there was, when you get rid of your brother-in-law, something really went south. So that's, David Reeves is no longer part of, other than Thanksgiving and Christmas, a part of Lane Kiffin's world. And since Lane and Layla are divorced, he's no longer a part of that either, I wouldn't imagine. The other thing that came out is Peyton Manning's son throwing the ball around. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, be ready for a heartbreak in this regard, because the Mannings, I know Peyton loves Tennessee, but the Mannings are going to make this a business decision. So just because there are emotional ties, it doesn't mean that Tennessee is going to be in line just to nab Peyton's son because.
I agree. And this is, people forget, one of the things that I think is great about Peyton Manning, particularly more than any of the other Mannings, is he doesn't make decisions based on emotional ties. He's probably the peak of everybody in the Manning family makes business decisions. It was a business decision to bail on Ole Miss and go to Tennessee. That was a smart decision for him in the 90s. It was also a business decision for him to stay at Tennessee. I don't buy the whole he wanted to come back. I think he was weighing, I don't want to go to the Jets. I think the real reason Peyton Manning came back was because he did not want to get drafted by the Jets, and I think that was a smart decision on his part in 97.
Well, also, I think Arch was a business decision too. I
agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at Ole Miss, I think they had questions about whether or not Lane Kiffin would be there long term. I think if you look at Tennessee, is Josh Heupel's offense set you up for the NFL? You could argue not. I thought that was a business decision as well for Arch to go to Texas. So, I mean, just go ahead and get ready, because I'm going to tell you that the emotional ties aren't going to play into it, and don't be surprised if Peyton Manning's son ends up somewhere else. Now, again, we're talking way down the road, and I'm curious, watching over the weekend, did you watch much of the Pro Bowl festivities or whatever they call it now?
No, I just saw the clips of Marshall throwing some dimes to Justin Jefferson. He's got an arm. I mean, I'll say that. He's got a better arm than Peyton.
And then you got Kirk Cousins, who's taking it incredibly serious. It made me wonder what Vol you would like to see take part in that. And as far as recent history, I think Hendon Hooker would be fun to watch in that. I think there are a lot of guys. If you want to talk guys on the team now, I think Dylan Sampson with his speed would be a lot of fun to watch in that. I think you might see Jalen Hyde in that group. The thing that they've got to figure out about that thing is they have got to get guys that, Caleb, are actually household names. Everybody turns it down, and then suddenly you've got Pro Bowl festivities around Kirk Cousins, who acted like it was the Super Bowl. Portions of the program brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Since 1961, City Heating and Air Conditioning has been the standard of quality HVAC installation and service, and they are fantastic. Integrity matters. City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Blake Toppmeyer will join us next. He is the SEC columnist for Gannett and the USA Today Network. You hang with me, and we'll talk Vols and also the SEC in exactly 2 minutes. Stay tuned. Off the Hook Sports.
Family has been creating jewelry since 1986, each piece unique with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Inflation has risen to the highest level in over 40 years, according to the April 2022 U.S. Inflation Calculator. Will your investments provide you the income you need in retirement? Are you losing purchasing power of your savings due to inflation? Simply stated, if the cost of goods and services are 8% higher and you're only earning 4% in your investments, that money buys you less of what you need. Right now is the time to act. Call Guardian Investment Advisors today.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here. I want to personally invite you to North Knoxville's newest sports bar and restaurant. It's Big Orange Phillies, located in Black Oak Center. And yes folks, it's happening in Halls. Big Orange Phillies offers family-friendly environment with homemade meals and the best deli-style subs around. Billiards, darts, jukebox, shuffleboard, and cornhole, and a full bar. We also offer valet parking on weekends and during special events. We even have a covered back patio. It's happening at Big Orange Phillies. We want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Chattanooga, we're at it again. For the 5th year in a row, you voted us best of the best criminal and DUI law firm.
And finalists for best law firm and best personal injury firm.
Thank you for the love, Chattanooga. We won't let you down.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Welcome back. I want to remind you that your pet shouldn't suffer if you use the promo code Off the Hook at crafttreats.com. They've got the chill pills with the CBD, and they will take care of your pet, whether or not it's arthritis or whether or not it might be social anxiety, whatever anxiety, car anxiety, or digestive issues as well. Don't forget crafttreats.com. They've got holistic treats as well, other than the CBD, and the CBD is fantastic. I use it with my pet. Again, use the promo code for 20% off, and just use the promo code Off the Hook. Blake Toppmeyer, the SEC columnist for Gannett and the USA Today Network, joins us now. Blake, how are you, sir?
Doing well. You guys?
I'm well. Let's turn to Alabama for a moment, and they hire a couple of coordinators, and just your initial thoughts on who they've restocked the cupboard with, because I thought there were some coaching issues at time last year as far as the way they approach teams and maybe some clutch situations. What did you think last year, and what do you think of the hires?
Yeah, I thought it was time for a change at Alabama in the coordinator seats, but I think what these hires remind us of is that, in truth, Nick Saban wields no magic wand. I think in scenarios where, a couple coordinator jobs come open, there's this belief that this is all part of Saban's grand plan, and he's going to go out and get these great cutting edge coordinators, the two top coordinators in the business, and the whole world is going to bend in whatever direction he wants. But in truth, this was not a dynasty that was built with magical powers. It was built by assembling the best rosters and developing those players into NFL talent. And Saban has made good hires over the years. You think about his hires of Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian as his coordinators. Of course, Kirby Smart and Jeremy Pruitt had a lot of success as his defensive coordinators. But he hasn't gone out and rated the top sitting coordinators in college football or in the NFL in many or any instances. And so I think what he got here are a couple guys that make you think, okay, these could be good hires. They may not be. So many times with coordinators, we don't really know whether these hires are going to be a splash or a flop. Tommy Rees at Notre Dame, his offenses were kind of middling units. at Notre Dame. His talent level obviously is going to be higher at Alabama. I think this tells me that Alabama could go back into more of a pro-style, run-oriented direction. If you look at what Tommy Rees did at Notre Dame as your guide, tight ends, handing the ball off. Kevin Steele, familiar face that has bounced around the SEC time and again. People keep hiring him. I think he's well respected at what he does as a defensive coordinator. But again, this is not some cutting edge defensive coordinator, the brightest mind out there that was just waiting and ready to jump into Nick Saban's arms. This is someone Saban knows, whom he's worked with, felt comfortable with, a face of familiarity. But yeah, bottom line, I think it tells me, Alabama fans that thought, okay, replacing Bill O'Brien and in the defensive coordinator spots with a wave of the magic wand to get whoever you want. It's not as simple as that, even for Nick Saban.
The Rees thing, was still, to me, that's kind of a yes man. I think that it's going to be Nick Saban's defense, as it to some extent always has been. But with the Rees hire, if you had a bet right now, is Alabama ahead of the curve or going back to a more physical style, or are they kind of grasping at straws a little bit? Because I don't see the Josh Heupel offenses of the world, the TCU offenses of the world slowing down anytime soon.
No, and it never made sense to me, though, that Nick Saban was going to go in that direction. I think there was a certain segment of Alabama fans, for instance, that would have liked to have seen Jeff Lebby be the next offensive coordinator at Alabama. And I found that unlikely. I mean, Nick Saban has shown a willingness to evolve throughout his career. That's one of the things that's kept him on top of the sport for as long as he has. He's gone in more of a tempo, passing-oriented direction. But I never believed that Saban would go, full turn, full 180 from what he used to do and go into that warp speed Jeff Lebby style system that obviously Tennessee fans are familiar with Josh Heupel's system, which is very similar here at Tennessee. So to me, though, with the Tommy Rees hire, this points to more of a pro-style, traditional Alabama type of look. I think we heard actually Nick Saban kind of point to this throughout this past season. He talked about how, with Bryce Young, they got into really kind of a pass-happy type system. And of course, we all remember the RPOs galore that were sort of Alabama's bread and butter with Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones. They've been blessed with some really great college quarterbacks the last several runs here. They are now heading into a quarterback transition, and we don't know that the next great Alabama quarterback is waiting in the wings. I mean, they have Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. Milroe looked like an athlete, but not a polished passer during his relief of Bryce Young last year, and we barely saw Ty Simpson. He's a touted prospect, from a Tennessee high school, but we didn't see much of him as a freshman. And so it probably makes sense, in fact, that he would be taking his offense in a direction that, again, is more of what we think of when we think the early days of Alabama's dynasty, because I'm not sure this is a program that is suited in the year 2023 to be built around its quarterback, the arm of its quarterback. Now, is that a great sign for Alabama? Not necessarily, because I think most offenses these days are built around their quarterbacks. But yeah, this tells me with this hire of Tommy Rees, at least if he's going to run his offense the way he did it at Notre Dame, I think this is going to be more traditional Alabama.
Like, sticking on this, the way you're talking about Nick Saban, I mean, the thing that's coming into my mind, which is crazy, is that it seems like he's following the lead of his protege, Kirby Smart, because Kirby Smart just won back-to-back national titles running the old offenses that Nick Saban ran at Alabama in the early days. And Nick Saban, who fought against tempo offenses, tried to get a rule change against it before he accepted it. Does this seem like Nick Saban has decided, okay, well, if Kirby Smart can do it, I can do it, and I prefer this type of offense because he doesn't really like to think creatively on offense. That's not his bread and butter.
I think if you look throughout the course of Saban's career, he's always been willing to look around the landscape of college football and say, is there someone out there who is doing something better than what we are currently doing it? And how can we possibly start to do what they're doing, but take it up a notch even higher? You go back to the Tipo offenses. One of the reasons he finally caved was going up against Hugh Freeze in an RPO, more tempo style system that gave Alabama trouble. And so he finally, as you said, after he was unable to get the sport of college football to bend in the direction he wanted in terms of the rules surrounding Tipo offenses, he finally said, okay, there's another offense out there that's doing it really well, that's giving my team trouble. How do we do some of that? Well, now I think if he were to look across the landscape of college football and say, who's doing this the best? Who's doing it in a way that I envy? I think it is fair to say, yes, he can look at what Kirby Smart in Georgia has done the last couple of years and think, why can't we do that? Now, I would say it's not as simple as just a system change. I don't think bringing in Tommy Rees is going to make Alabama's offense, leading the nation in scoring all of a sudden. I think the bigger issue is here, they lost one of, if not the best quarterbacks in college football from the past 2 seasons, Bryce Young, and there's no obvious heir waiting in the wings. Now, this also tells me that I don't think Alabama's putting all of its eggs in the Jalen Milroe basket. And I didn't think that before this coordinator hire, but I certainly do not think it now. I think if you were going to hire a coordinator to hire to Jalen, to cater to Jalen Milroe's talents, abilities, and needs, I think you would hire someone who has a reputation for wide open system, a lot of quarterback runs, puts the quarterback in space. I don't know that that's what Tommy Rees is going to bring to Alabama. And so this tells me that Jalen Milroe may not be the guy for Alabama, which isn't necessarily a surprise. I always kind of think that Ty Simpson had a good chance of winning this job.
Sticking with the looking around the landscape of the SEC, the 247 Sports Composite Team recruiting rankings for 2023 after signing day last week finished with Alabama at number 1, Georgia at number 2, Texas at number 3, Oklahoma at number 4, both of whom are joining the SEC in a couple of years. Which we know about Alabama and Georgia, and then LSU at number 6 and Tennessee at number 9. So between Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, and Tennessee, which of those 4 are best positioned to be the threat to be the potentially next Georgia in the SEC or next Alabama?
I would probably point to Texas, and I know the Texas is back thing has become a phrase that's been prematurely used so often that it's now a joke, right? We now use it in sarcasm. Whenever Texas loses to Kansas or something, we say Texas is back. But there's a reason why Texas, I think, has been viewed as this sleeping giant for over the past decade. We've seen Texas on top of college football in our lifetimes, right? They had a really good stretch of success there under Mac Brown before it fizzled. They are a revenue giant in a talent deep state. And you look at this class right now that Steve Sarkisian is coming in on the heels of an 8-5 season. Texas has had just 1 win of double-digit victories in over a decade. And yet Texas just signed the number 3 recruiting class in the nation, highlighted by Arch Manning. Really good football players want to play for Texas. They always have. That's still the case. Steve Sarkisian is recruiting well. And I think with Texas coming into the SEC, I think that's going to propel their recruiting even more. If you were a star football player in the state of Texas, one of your hesitations toward going there may have been, if you want to play in the best conference in the land, that requires you not to go to play for the Texas Longhorns. That is no longer going to be the case. I do think there is real momentum building in that program. If you look at Texas this past season, they had a top 30 national defense. That was the best defense Texas has possessed since its 2009 season, in which Texas lost to Alabama in the national championship. Texas over the last decade has had talented rosters, but I think one of the persistent bugaboos with that program hasn't always been real physical at the line of scrimmage. I don't think they've been dominating guys in the trenches the way you would think a team with that level of talent is. I'm not saying everything's solved at Texas, but I do think that was a more physical team last year. I do think the defense really improved last season, and I do think Steve Sarkisian's recruiting well. I think once the laughs, the guffaws end, I think Texas is trending toward becoming, a force in college football. Am I saying they're gonna run the universe or run the SEC as soon as they arrive? No, but I do think that the jokes of Texas being back are going to start to blur into reality here in a couple years. Well, and you also have A&M that seems to be slipping a bit. You wonder if that'll help their recruiting in the future. So I'm going to play devil's advocate, though. To me, the scariest team, if you're in the SEC, is LSU. They won a couple of championships with, I believe, very average to below average coaches. And now I think they have a very good coach in Baton Rouge. And covering recruiting, the kids there that are offered by LSU just don't leave if they really want them. That to me looks like a real setup for maybe long-term success as long as Brian Kelly wants to coach. Yeah, I agree, Dave. That may have been I may have been a victim of listening comprehension there. Yes, if LSU was a choice, then LSU is the answer. Yes, if we're picking someone who's going to ascend to national championship type dominance, yes, I think LSU is the answer for the reasons you just mentioned. They're the only Power 5 school in a talent-rich state. You're right. You look at the coaches that have won national championships there. Brian Kelly's better than any of those coaches. I think LSU is positioned to be one of the elite programs in college football for years to come here, with the talent that they're going to bring into that program with Brian Kelly as their coach. Completely agree. I think LSU is going to win a national championship within the next few years. If we're looking at a team, though, that I think is down or has been down a little bit, has been punching below its weight, and could really ascend to a higher level, I think that's where Texas comes in. As far as the East, everybody is so excited about South Carolina all of a sudden. And I've got questions about their coaching staff. And then you have Florida, who can't figure out how to pay players in this day and age when you're allowed to pay players. How do you see the East? Other than Tennessee, and we know Georgia, who's the next really good team in the East? I'm not sold that it's the Gamecocks. No, I'm not either. I do think some credit is due for Shane Beamer's recruiting. No question. I think signing top 20 classes at South Carolina is easier said than done. South Carolina's recruiting class this year is its highest ranked class in over a decade since when Steve Spurrier was there. And South Carolina was playing at its highest level of the Steve Spurrier era. That's the last time South Carolina's recruiting was this good. So I do think he's doing good things on the trail. I still hesitate to say, South Carolina is going to be something of a force. I mean, I think they can go 8-4. I think South Carolina can be an 8-4 type program, which is better than what they've been in many years since the height of Spurrier's peak. I don't see another top challenger out there. I mean, I really think Tennessee's in great shape. I think Tennessee should be looking at Texas and Oklahoma and and media contracts and the Big 12 and say, hey, can you guys keep Texas and Oklahoma in that conference as long as you can? Because these division things suddenly are okay. They're fine for Tennessee now. Now it's still, it stinks for Tennessee that they're designated to play Alabama every year as their crossover rival. But I think Tennessee has gotten itself into the place where it is now firmly in place as number 2 in the pecking order in the SEC East. Florida looks like a bit of a mess right now. South Carolina, I think, is going to comfortably hang out on that next perch in sort of the middle of the pack in the division. I think South Carolina has separated itself from the Vanderbilts and the Missouris of the world, but I still think there's quite a ways to go to be up to where Tennessee is. Now, I say that with the obvious caveat of Tennessee played terrible against South Carolina this year and got whooped by them. But I think where the programs are, I still think Tennessee's on a better perch. I think they've moved into that number 2 spot in the division. I think Florida long term is the obvious program that you would say should be back on that level. I don't know that Florida is heading necessarily toward an abyss here of just like dark days for the Florida program. But I think Tennessee's comfortably on that number 2 spot right now with the way they're recruiting, with the coach they have. I think they're positioned for success into the future. And yeah, like I said, if I'm Tennessee, I'm thinking don't speed that entry along, Texas and Oklahoma. Things are going okay here in the East right now for the Vols.
Great follow on Twitter. Great writer at B Toppmeyer, BTOPPMEYER. I would highly encourage you to check out his work with Gannett and the USA Today Network, the SEC columnist that is Blake Toppmeyer. Blake, certainly appreciate it. Hopefully we can catch up again. Keep up the fantastic work.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thanks, buddy. Blake Toppmeyer with the USA Today Network and Gannett News Service. As far as the SEC and how it shakes out when Texas and Oklahoma, I don't know that you and I have discussed this actually. What would benefit Tennessee most in terms of the Alabama rivalry that is year in and year out and such a special part of the history of Tennessee? Is that sacred to you? Should it be sacred, Caleb?
I think it should be sacred, but I think if you're thinking for Tennessee's sake, I think that I think the best thing for Tennessee would be a pod system, because quite honestly, if you do a pod system, there's no way you can do a pod system and not have Tennessee in the same pod with Vanderbilt and Kentucky. And so, I mean, that's what I actually want to see with the SEC, and they're not going down this road, but I think there's a great way where they can protect all the rivals. And I think that is to keep the divisions, do 2 8-team divisions, and move Alabama and Auburn over to the East.
Agreed.
Move Missouri over to the West.
Agreed.
And then all of a sudden, the only of the 10 most played rivalries that will be in existence when that SEC forms, the only one that wouldn't be annual at that point would be Alabama and Mississippi State. I don't think Mississippi State fans are going to complain about not having to play Alabama every year anymore. So,
well, and that's not. I mean, that's not a permanent rivalry that everybody looks forward to. Basically, you're protecting the permanent division rivalries, and there are 2. There's Georgia, Auburn, and there's Tennessee, Alabama. Other than that, LSU, Florida is kind of neat. I mean, I like the colors, I like the talent on the field, but there's no other one other than those 2 with historic significance that you go out of your way to keep.
Right, exactly. And so if you move, and that's the thing, if you move those 2 over, you've got all the rivalries, the divisional rivalries that already exist, and then you bring back more meaning to these 2 interdivisional rivalries with Alabama and Auburn, and Tennessee and Georgia. You're absolutely right. And so I think I think it's perfect. You bring more meaning to Texas and Oklahoma, Texas and Texas A&M, Arkansas and Missouri on that other side. I feel like LSU has never really had the most natural rival, so it's always been with Ole Miss, Mississippi State anyway. And so I think that, I think the best way, and also people keep talking about a pod system and no divisions. I got to be honest, I think that's disastrous, because I think that I know the divisions can be unfair, but Dave, you're going to have probably 2 teams playing for the SEC title one year, only playing because they got the easiest draw in the history of the world that year in the SEC schedule. I don't think with 16 teams, I don't think that's possible. Quite honestly.
Is it at all possible just to do through 16 and just like they did back in the day? Remember,
look at
10, and then it would just, the SEC champion was just whoever finished number 1.
But but it was never effective to me, because look at the records of some of those champions, and they weren't always the best team. They had the best draw, and also you had some SEC teams playing 7 games and some playing 6. And so my best example for that is historically Kentucky, 1950. Tennessee beats Kentucky that year. Tennessee finishes 5-1 in the SEC. Kentucky got the Sugar Bowl invite because they played 1 extra game and they finished 6-1. That's why they get to claim that national championship that they won that year. And that's just, I think I get people don't like divisions. I get, and people complain about it in the NFL all the time, but I think it's the most effective democratic way, if you must, like from a democracy way of crowning a champion, because otherwise the only difference, if you have 18 divisions, you play all 7 teams in your division, and then you play 2 from the other division, and that's on a rotational basis. Now, there's still going to be a little bit of a disparity in schedule, but it's a disparity over 2 games, not over 8 games, if that makes sense.
I I cannot bring myself to say it, but for the betterment of competition, drop the Alabama-Tennessee rivalry. But in my heart, that's what my head says, Caleb. But in my heart, I'm like, that's something special. That's losing something. And I know progress is progress. And at some point, we went from diesel to unleaded, and we'll go from unleaded to electric energy. And I get all that. And that's progress. And that's neat. But there's some part of me that likes the way my little coupe drives, and the fact that it's gas powered and I can hear the engine, and it's not like an electric car where I can't hear it. And I'm the same way with the Alabama-Tennessee rivalry. It's just cool. And to lose that, maybe you make progress, maybe it's more fair, but my heart can't go down that road, Caleb. I love college football and the SEC too much.
I agree. And I think what makes it harder, though, with our hearts is because this discussion is happening just as Tennessee finally got back to being competitive with Alabama again. 5 years ago, I'd have said drop the rivalry because Alabama was just – there were – since that long streak in 2007 when Saban came, the only two times Tennessee put up a fight against Alabama was 2009 and 2015. They lost both of those games. Although Butch Jones said they were going to be competitive because they had a better juice bar than Alabama, so they were going to out-recruit Alabama. But, yeah, I get your point. But my head doesn't even say drop the series because my head says move Alabama and Auburn to the East, and I think two divisions are still the most effective way to crown a champion. Everybody talks about the one poll and random draws. If you're playing 9 conference games and there's 16 teams, there are going to be vastly different schedules among teams in the SEC, and you're going to just pick the top 2 to play for the SEC championship, and you will probably get the top 2 that got the easiest draw every year. Now, maybe the SEC championship doesn't matter as much anymore with the 12-team playoff, but I don't know. I think there's something still to be said about winning your conference.
Yep. John said, who cares about tradition now? We will have too many teams to care. It used to be a recruit would come because of a team. Now NIL. Smoky Mountain Red said, I thought one pool was the way it was going. But if it isn't, and it is the pools, is it 4 pools? I haven't heard anything definitive, and I don't think there's been anything announced as far as one pool or pools or divisions. Caleb, I'd say they'll wait for that up until the year before would be my guess.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think they really know the best way to do it. I've heard four pods, either four pods where you have 3 regular opponents you play every year, and then you have a total random draw of the other 6 or whatever each year. And there's no actual divisions. I'm just not a fan of it. By the way, one day I will say that, down the line where I'd move, where the SEC might expand is, look, I don't think we're that far down the road from Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech, and NC State joining the SEC. I think those are going to be the next 4 teams to join the SEC. Y'all heard it here first. Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech, NC State. And I think then you're going to have 5 teams per division in 20-team division.
That wouldn't surprise me. The 2 I would like to get in there, again, this goes back to the heart versus head. I know they're not the best selection from a business standpoint, but West Virginia, who I think is a very SEC-filled town, if you've ever been there, and the other is Georgia Tech because of tradition. But I agree with you. I think to go get the teams you mentioned would be a better business move. Zool Beer is the official craft beer of Off the Hook Sports. Go to xulbeer.com to learn more. Worldwide award-winning craft beer, and they've got fantastic parking in downtown Knoxville, a great place to hang out and have some incredible beer, great merch as well. So hang tight. Coming up after Darnell Wright's showing in the Senior Bowl, and it was fantastic. What player, maybe not named Hooker, will the Vols miss the most in 2023? 2 minutes Off the Hook Sports.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Bassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here, Viles Automotive on Calhoun Drive. I've been selling cars here in East Tennessee for 27 years. In that time, I've come to realize it's not about the car. It's about you, the customer. So I'm here to take care of you just like family. Good credit, bad credit, you name it, we can get you taken care of. If we don't have it, we can find it for you. We go across the country to get any vehicle that you want. And here at Viles Automotive, we don't believe in fake numbers. We just give you great deals. And as always, we want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Chattanooga, we're at it again. For the 5th year in a row, you voted us best of the best criminal and DUI law firm.
And finalist for best law firm and best personal injury firm.
Thank you for the love, Chattanooga. We won't let you down.
Our family has been creating jewelry since 1986, each piece unique with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Welcome back. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Portions of the program brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. AndyMasonRealEstate.com, with over 40 years of experience in that office, is fantastic when it comes to your real estate needs in Knoxville. AndyMasonRealEstate.com will make sure that you find the right home, and they have 2 business principles. One, the best service, and one, the absolute best prices. So AndyMasonRealEstate.com, don't make a mistake. That's going to cost you thousands. Make the choice with AndyMasonRealEstate.com, and in some cases tens of thousands. He will be sure and take care of you. It's a pretty crazy market. Let Andy Mason guide you through it. The Vols that have departed, that they're still with us, but they're going to the NFL. The Vols that are headed to the NFL want to play a quick game after what we saw from Darnell Wright, and want to ask you, big loss, manageable, or that's fine? And so let's go big loss, no worries, so long. So we'll do it that way. Big loss, no worries, so long. I'm going to throw some names at you, and you tell me who you think Tennessee will miss the most in 2023. We saw a Senior Bowl, Darnell Wright. And listen, I know a lot of people don't watch an awful lot of offensive line play. It's easier to watch the ball. I don't think my wife has ever even seen an offensive line. But I think that Darnell Wright is a big loss. I think he was the most gifted, one of the most gifted athletes on the team, and by far the most gifted athlete on Tennessee's offensive line. So, Caleb, big loss, no worries, so long.
Gigantic, monster loss in Darnell Wright. Huge loss. I'm with you. I think one of the things about, it's funny, nobody watches offensive linemen, but the funny thing about that is, when you talk about evaluation processes and recruiting, 5-star offensive linemen are kind of the easiest ones to figure out. Like, you don't even need to know football, and you can just look at him and be like, that guy's good.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that he could slip into the first round, which, based off his play at the Senior Bowl, is pretty incredible for a guy that's projected to play right tackle. But I think he could play right tackle. I also think in a pinch that he could slip over and play left tackle. I just think he's incredibly versatile and going to be a really good player. And, you know, the guy can do backflips, according to Cooper Mays, who, if you haven't heard, is fantastic on our YouTube channel. Okay, so this is kind of one that I think may ruffle some feathers, but Jeremy Banks, big loss, no worries, so long.
if I talk from an emotional perspective because of Jeremy Banks's like attitude and character things, I would want to say so long, but you can't say so long. You got it. I say manageable. But I say he's somebody you're going to have a hard time replacing. But you want to be able to say so long because of what he did to the team at the end of last year. But the fact of the matter is that he was crucial to that defense through most of the year. So I'm going to say manageable.
Yeah, I don't think he was quite as good as maybe what you think. I thought he was going to have just an incredible year, and I thought he was pretty average. And then with whatever locker room distraction, I'm sorry, but based off what I know about Hendon Hooker and based off what I know about Joe Milton, who was part of breaking up that tussle in the locker room, I've got to pin it on Jeremy Banks. So I'm going to say so long. I think that Tennessee is better off without him. Okay, so I want to get to Hendon Hooker here in a bit, and it may surprise you, but Jerome Carvin, big loss, no worries, so long.
Is it big loss like no worry, like okay, big loss manageable or no worries so long? I would say I'm between big loss and no worries. I'm going to go with no worries because I think Jerome Carvin was a solid blocker, but I don't think he was irreplaceable like Darnell Wright. I think you can actually replace Jerome Carvin a little bit easier than you can, a heck of a lot easier than you can Darnell Wright, for that matter.
I'm actually going to say big loss on that one, and I know you like his play as well. So I think that he was an underrated offensive lineman that probably was lost in the shadows of Darnell Wright and lost in the overall production of this offensive line. But I think Jerome Carvin is very, very good. Now we get to three that might surprise people. Jalen Hyatt, big loss, no worries, so long. So no worries would be you can replace him. It's manageable so long as you're better off without him. So Jalen.
Oh, I didn't know that was the criteria. Sorry. I'll say
for you.
I'll say no worries then. I don't want to say so long, like, oh, good riddance, Jalen Hyatt. But yeah, I say no worries. I think Dante Thornton is going to be better than Jalen Hyatt. There, I said it.
I'm going to go no worries as well because I think that slot position creates an awful lot of opportunities for players. I think we saw that in Bayless Jones in 2021. So Jalen Hyatt took advantage of it. No knock against him. But he's an absolute speedster that was playing in the right position with the right players at this time. So as far as big loss, no worries, so long, I will go no worries. Definitely not so long. If you had another year out of him, you'd love to have it. Cedric Tillman, big loss, no worries, so long.
No worries. Cedric Tillman was not right half of last year and didn't play the other half, and Tennessee got their best wins without him. Not that I don't love Cedric Tillman, the player. I think you and I both agree he's got better NFL potential than Jalen Hyatt does. But I think Tennessee has so many receivers, and Josh Heupel's system is designed to get receivers open, so wide open that I don't really think it's that big of a deal, quite honestly.
I'm even going to go so long, and the reason is, when Tennessee played their best football, he wasn't in the game because of injury. And I don't, maybe he never got in the flow. I mean, it was an early injury against Akron, but I'm kind of fine with that. And I guess the deciding factor in my mind for some of these guys is going to be the decision not to play in the bowl game. And I understand we're in a different era, but if you had somebody that is going to be a part of the bowl game, is absolutely committed a million times to this program, then that's a little bit different to me, and that will be the deciding factor in some of these guys. But I'm going to say so long, not to sound harsh. And then the last is Hendon Hooker, and we already had somebody weigh in on this that said Hooker was special, but I feel Heupel can grow a quarterback. So big loss, no worries, so long. Hendon Hooker. Definitely not a so long. He was a great part of this program.
Yeah, I'm going to go big loss. Now, hear me out. I understand the hype behind Nico Iamaleava and what we saw from Joe Milton in the Orange Bowl. You and I both agree that Joe Milton's Orange Bowl performance was a little bit of fool's gold, right? We think it was more fool's gold than it was what we're going to see consistently next year.
Along those lines, I think that Clemson didn't take the game as seriously as Tennessee, and Clemson played a lot of soft coverage. So along those lines, yes, I do think it was full scope.
Yeah, so we agree that Hooker is better than Joe Milton. So then it would come to Hendon Hooker versus Nico Iamaleava. Yes, I think Nico Iamaleava could end up being better than Hooker, but then you throw in Hooker's leadership. And I mean, we were talking about Jeremy Banks breaking apart the team, but Hendon Hooker really, I mean, I've heard Cooper Mays on your show plenty of times. He wants to go to battle for Hendon. He's willing to go to all-out war for Hendon Hooker. He didn't even care about where the ball was after Hooker fumbled when he tore his ACL. He was looking straight at Hooker the whole time. And I think that you can't just replace that with talent. So I'm going to go big loss. I think the intangibles matter.
Yeah, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I think the intangibles matter. I think the leadership, I think the belief in what Tennessee was able to do before they had done anything stems largely from Hendon Hooker. I think that is a very big loss. And it's brought to you by Bassey Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it's worth the drive. Bassey Lawn and Garden, when it comes to industrial mowers, when it comes to commercial mowers, or even residential mowers, it's worth the drive, whether you're from Knoxville, Nashville, Chattanooga, and you need to restock your fleet, or maybe you're starting a company. But if you're in the corporate world and you need to restock your fleet to get everything taken care of, the buying power of Bassey Lawn and Garden is just on a whole different level. So they will save you money, whatever level of mower you need. So that's Bassey Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it's worth the drive. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. We'll be with you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Jimmy Himes of the Sports Animal, Hall of Famer, will join us tomorrow. So looking forward to that. We'll talk about Tennessee, what they can be on the basketball court, and get his thoughts on where the Vols are, because Saturday, again, was kind of brutal. So check out the YouTube channel. Check out offthehooksports.com for the latest. I've got a column going up of what quarterback over the recent history, which would be the past quarter of a century, would be a great fit in Josh Heupel's offense, and more. Caleb always has great stuff going up, and we'll have some recruiting news as well. I'll close it with this. Smoky Mountain Red said Wright is the only big loss. The kid is a stud, so he's excluding Hendon Hooker. That's interesting. Have a fantastic day, evening, afternoon, whenever you're watching. For Caleb Calhoun,